Hi folks, hopefully the camera's set up because this is the main camera now. I'm normally using the Sony AX33, now I'm using the Sony Mark 10, I can't remember the full name, RX10 Mark 3, that's the one. There's some cool ass bubbly clouds today, so I've just taken a time lapse here. But enough about that, I'm going to tell you about my theory test, which I've now taken. That was yesterday, so I had to plan my goddamn route, as I have to do all the time at the moment, locked into buses, bus timetables, bus durations when waiting between buses, and locations you can go on bus routes and things. That's what I've been doing, that and trains, for the past, however many years since I started travelling. So I got the tickets and everything to get to Plymouth, which is where my test was due, at a place called Princess Court on Princess Street, which is, I can only assume, either a big government building or a building in which all the driving test rooms and stuff are government controlled, because why wouldn't they be? DVLA and all that tax funded stuff. So I wasn't looking forward to that. I was looking forward to doing my theory test and getting it out the way. I was prepared for the intense levels of government control, although I thought I was going to give these people a pass and say that they're probably not going to go like really obviously controlling and stuff with their systems that they have in place, but they were. So I took my trip, I think it was like over an hour to get to Plymouth on the buses, and then I had some time when I got there, so I sort of meandered around Plymouth, I was looking for a Halfords, but I couldn't find one. I think I was in the wrong place. I saw the bit where they cut all the trees down and shit. I also saw the bit where like Sargon's UKIP van thing showed up all those years back, where I came to see what all the fuss was about. I had a look around, walked to where the test centre was, thinking that for some reason it was at 12:15. I'd booked the test for 1 o'clock, and they said arrive 15 minutes early, so that's why the confusion in my head. I was thinking 15, must be 12:15, right? But it was 12:45, so I got there and sat on a bench, realised my mistake, and went, oh shit, I've got quite a while actually. Went back into town, got a little KFC, because, villages and towns don't have KFCs, to be honest. Well, not around here. Had a look in the country hiking shops to try and find a camper lamp, because my one's breaking a little bit, like the plastic is broken off into place. They didn't have one. I think it was Cotswold Outdoors. They didn't have one. And so I left once again to walk to the same place where I was, near the fountains, to see if I could get in the test centre. And I could. The test centre was on the first floor, so you had to go up an elevator. There were other people. It seemed like there was 3 other people waiting to do a driving test. I followed one guy in, who was a chubby guy wearing a fluorescent yellow jacket. I thought he would look like a delivery man or a lorry driver at first, but then he's in the room ready to take the test, the theory test with us. We were in a queue in like a little kind of reception room we went into. You're meant to turn off all phones. I chose not to bring my phone because I don't trust government. I think they might be like tracking people, using surveillance, using identity, trying to track people, trying to tie you to your email address. So I made a new email address. They say to put your stuff in a secure locker, but I feel like they would just like unlock the locker, or they have some equipment that can like detect your phone or something that they put into phones to begin with. I'm very kind of skeptical of all the technology stuff when it comes to government. So I didn't bring my phone. He asked for it, the guy at the desk. He was a very chubby, kind of stern guy, who was like, come forward. No, you wait there. No, you go back to the back of the queue. You've got you're the wrong test subject. Or your test is longer. Come to the front of the queue. Come here. don't touch me. Put your driving license in a little plastic basket and then hand it to me. And then I'll hand you the basket back, and then you wait with the basket on your lap on the seat. Don't touch the driving license. And there's like COVID nonsense. There's like squirty, like hand sanitizer bottles and all that. I just ignored those. They're like, check all your pockets, empty out all your pockets for me. And then eventually it was my time to be brought forward, as the guy said, after the other 3 guys had gone in. One guy actually, they sat him down in the reception room in front of a big blank sheet to take his photo. I don't know what that was about, or to check how he looked and compare it to his driving license photo. It's like, look ahead, straight forward, please. It's like very kind of interrogative tones and stuff. And eventually it was my turn. He said, like, lock your stuff in the locker, and then put the key in the basket with your driving license, and then go around the corner and give the guy around the corner your key in the basket and your driving license. So they could have just taken the key out of the basket and unlocked my locker and had a look at my stuff. I don't know. Security cameras everywhere. So I went round out of the reception room now into a different room. There was a much nicer guy in there with glasses, but you just suddenly look around and he's like, wait behind the sign, please. And you can't really see down the corridor, but you can see he's at a workstation with monitors. And you think, oh, am I going to sit at this monitor here and do my test? Where'd the other people go to? And then he goes, right, now this guy's gone through a door, step forward, please, to the sign. I said, can I come forward past the sign? He said, yes. And then suddenly I'm in, like, this office, and he's got 2 monitors are up, and he's doing something on one of the computers. And there's glass windows. It's like a recording booth of glass windows looking out onto like a bunch of desks in an L shape, and there's like 15 people in past the recording booth thing, like on little PCs with dividers between them. I didn't realise there was so many people in that place taking their tests. So there's like 15 people sat down with headphones at PCs with their backs to us. And he's got on his monitor, this guy with the glasses, like CCTV down above the head of every candidate, and he's just got a kind of gallery window display of like the backs of all the candidates' heads as they're doing the test. And he's like, put your arms out either side so I can check your wrists, check there's nothing written on your wrists, and then like empty out your pockets. And I said, are you going to pat me down and search me? He said no. So I was expecting them to pat me down because I think that's what it said on the website. And then he like described the test to me briefly and said, look, workstation 7's free in there, go into the room. And yeah, it's very silent in there. They have it's like a little prison. It's like a bunch of prison cells basically lined up. You're separated from everyone, but you know they're there. There are 2 guards or staff members walking back and forth behind you, despite the cameras above your head looking at you. There's like 2 staff members walking back and forth behind you, checking like what people are doing. I guess they're looking to see if anyone's got cheat books and stuff, but it seems slightly more controlled than the exams you'd get, say, in high school or something. Sat down at the monitor and we did the test. There were like a couple of tutorial videos and descriptions. It's really hard to concentrate in there. Firstly, the seat was not comfortable. They were probably looking at me funny because I was trying to get the seat. It's one of those office chairs and I was bringing it up and down to try and get the right level under the desk because I'm tall. I didn't want headphones, but at one point it said like there's going to be something with sound later on, so you need your headphones. There wasn't anything important with sound in the video sections, to be honest. You didn't need to listen to them. So I guess I put them on to kind of, it helped kind of blot out the tiny, because everyone had to be silent, so there's just tiny chair, not when you're in a room and everyone's told to be silent, like at a school or something, and it amplifies the amount of noise that you hear, to be honest. You just hear shuffling and people breathing and like burps and people stretching and everyone scratching their heads, and all the tiny noises are amplified to be the loud noises when people aren't allowed to just be as they normally would, like. So I could hear all that going on, so I put on the headphones, and when you put the headphones on you can still hear you mainly hear like the buzzing of the air conditioning and the PCs and stuff. They said no keyboard needed, you just use a mouse. My mouse seemed a bit broken. I was like, okay, I'll test the click on this test question. I was like, oh great, it's like a mouse that doesn't click, so you don't know when you've clicked other than what you see on screen. So I was like, oh god, if I have to do hazard perception with this mouse, is it going to register my clicks to put the little flag on the screen later on? But once I get into it, even though the mouse wasn't clicking right, it did seem to be registering 90% of my clicks. I think a couple times I had to press it twice, but it was okay in the end. I just wish they had a mouse that fucking clicked, so I knew tangibly when I'd answered, I could just move on. The theory test was the multiple answer questions. There wasn't any of the multiple answer questions with the checkboxes. It was all just click one radial button, which I was thankful for, because I did a mock test where one of the questions was like show me, tell me, and it was not radial buttons, it was checkbox buttons, and you had to select 3, and it never told me in the question you had to select 3. So I just thought it was like all the other questions. That thankfully didn't happen in the real test. The various tiny sounds you could hear were very distracting. It wasn't like taking the mock theory test in your home, it was more distracting. I think mostly because of the controlled environment you're in. It just like made it more distracting, more difficult to focus. If I was setting up a theory test for students to take, I wouldn't set it up in that way at all. No wonder so many people are failing. It's not anything to do with the questions, it's the environment you're in. So the questions, they weren't quite like the mock tests I'd taken. They did begin with a few obscure questions that I hadn't heard before or seen on the mock tests. There's one about checking your oil and when it's I don't know when it's correct to do so, or when it's safe to do so, or when would be the best time to do so. And I think I selected before a long journey, and you never at any point got to see which answers you'd got wrong. Like, they never told me, like at the end of the test or during the test or after it on the computer screen or face to face, never told me which questions I'd got wrong, which is really stupid, because if you knew what questions you got wrong after the test, after you failed or after you passed, then you'd know what to work on, or you'd know which things to memorize that you'd need to know. Which is, surely that's the whole point of the test, is you need to know these things. So yeah, we're not trying to catch it out with gotcha moments, we're trying to, like, these are the set questions, you need to know the answers to the questions. So I don't know why they didn't do that. The multiple choice, after the first few questions where there is some obscure ones, it started to go much as you'd expect if you take online mock tests, which I have been doing. It didn't show as many pictures as I thought it would. Some questions come with pictures on the mocks. Near the end it went into a couple of videos. It was one video actually, with multiple questions attached to the video. So I thought it was going to be multiple videos, but it's like, you're shown one video, you have to play through start to end, answer a question on what you saw in the video. Okay, good. Press next to get the next question. And it was the same video. I thought, oh, have I made a mistake here? It's like, no, because the questions on the right have changed, but it's the same video. So I was like, okay, I have to play the same video again, except I'm looking for something different here. And I think it was like a promenade on a beach, and a driver is turning at a junction to the right, one set of traffic lights, then he passes a second set of traffic lights, and it said, like, what would you do if you were going to turn right at the second set of traffic lights? Would you be going to a hospital or a tourist attraction or a bunch of other stuff? And it was like, there was no real indication of whether it was a hospital or whether it was a tourist attraction. This was a real video of someone driving a car on a promenade. We'll get to that in a minute. But you could pause in front of the sign and that the car drives past that might give directions to where he's going. It's from the driver's point of view, and it's not high definition video or anything, so you can't make out what the sign says. You can't read any of the things on the sign that's pointing to the right, and you can't even properly see the colours of the signs. Something was going on with the colours, it was desaturated. So I just guessed that it was a brown sign turning to the right, which would mean a tourist attraction. There was no sign for hospital. There was no sign for any of the other stuff. There was no sign. You couldn't read the sign to see if it was a tourist attraction, so it was completely guesswork. I think I might have got it wrong or something. But it was like, there was no way you could tell. I couldn't see any other cues that would tell me what kind of thing would be on the right if the car turned right, which it wasn't, if you know what I mean. Anyway, that was the only one that was a bit odd to me. Then it said I'd finished with 50 questions. There was a countdown timer in the top corner of the screen, and I kept getting paranoid about that. I was like forgetting how long the time I had was. I didn't know. Yeah, I was looking at it for a moment thinking, is that time elapsed? Is it counting up the amount of time I've done? In which case, how much time am I allowed? And I looked at it again and realised I think it was a countdown. And I couldn't work out if I was looking at minutes or seconds. It's just really disorienting in the room, hearing all the things behind you. I just couldn't focus. I could normally think properly. Like if I was at my PC and I saw a little clock in the corner of the screen, I'd be like, right, that's counting down, that's minutes, that's seconds. But because I was in that room, that weird controlled environment, strict as fuck, and I knew I was paranoid because I was being watched. I knew I was being watched. Like, it wasn't paranoia, it was like I knew I was being watched from behind because I'd seen it before I went in the room. So you're always mindful of that, and it just slows down your thinking and makes you not able to think properly. So I was like looking at this countdown clock and not knowing what I was seeing for a few seconds. And eventually I got to question 50 and I was like, oh, okay. So now I guess I'm on hazard perception. They said you could take a 3-minute break, but at the same time, a new countdown timer in the top right had started, and it's starting from a lot shorter time than the previous countdown thing, which made me think I have to rush these because there's going to be 14 questions. So I thought, sod the 3-minute break. I don't know if they're going to actually register that 3-minute break, seeing as the counter's already counting. So maybe they expect you to not take the 3-minute break. And if the counter elapses to 0, countdown elapses to 0, while you're on the test ends anyway. So I thought, I've got to get these 14 hazard questions done because the videos will take time to play. So let's go. So I didn't have the break, I went straight into it. And they threw me a curveball on the hazard perception test. On everything I've been told about the hazard perception test, and all the mock tests I've taken online, it was meant to be video clips. And it wasn't video clips. It was meant to be video clips from the driver's perspective of you driving down the road, and they've recorded these at certain times where they know that the driver will bump into 2 to 3 hazards that will just suddenly crop up. There's a bit of dead time at the start where nothing's happening, then the hazards happen in the middle. There's like 2 to 3 of them, and then there's a bit of dead time at the end where no hazards happen at all. And the curveball they threw me was, these weren't videos, they were CGI, computer generated like video games. And they had computer models of humans walking down the street, and you could tell they weren't real people, and you could tell like there were leaves blowing across the road, and you could tell they were little sprite things. They were like not real leaves or anything. And they had computer generated animated models of sheep and geese that didn't act like real animals at all. And they were coming in and out of the road, and you'd see the joints were all janky and it was like really bad. It's like a computer generated model from, let's not say Jedi Knight, let's give them the benefit of saying like after Jedi Knight Dark Forces 2, you know, after Quake era models, maybe like Half-Life 1, or a game just after Half-Life 1 era, computer generated models of like sheep and geese. And they're so bad, and you're just like, what? And they got the road markings, like they've modelled them in such a way that it kind of makes sense, but you can tell you're just not in a real environment. It's like, what am I being trained for here? To go into the Matrix or something? Or am I being trained? Because you're not being trained for real life. You have to guess hazards. You have to get your brain into the mindset. Like, okay, oh Jesus, this isn't even a video of a real life like I've been training for. This is a computer game trying to badly simulate real life, and I've got to get my mind that this is real life, or that what would you do in real life that the computer game is taking its reference from, that the modelers have created the computer game of. Like, you're like I was just trying to work through my mind backwards from the real life scenario that this must be based on to how it looks in the computer. I don't know. I can't describe it. It's like people say uncanny valley when something's trying to be real life and it just isn't. There's always something wrong about it that just keys your eye into the fact that this isn't reality, and you can just tell. It's like when you look at the new AI photo generations, like people are releasing loads of women pictures and stuff like you'd see on Instagram. Like, you know, Instagram models post endless pictures of themselves, these girls, and AI has just come in recently and is doing those exact same pictures because they're so formulaic, like of these girls, and they're trying to make it look like real life. But then you look at the hands or something, like you're looking at the image and it looks like, yeah, this is probably a real woman, right? It's very an exceedingly beautiful woman to the point where, you know, it's almost too perfect. But maybe I could buy that that's a real woman, but their hair looks too perfect. And then you look at, you go, the eyes look right, the nose looks right, the mouth looks right, and then you glance down at the hands and they've got like 6 fingers the size of giant sausages. You're like, what the fuck? And the one of the fingers is like doing something impossible, like the bone is broken backwards. It's like, what the is this some deformity? Have you been in a car accident? No, it's an AI image of a woman. It's like, yeah, that's the sort of thing I was looking at something worse than that on this hazard perception test thing. I was like, oh god, I've got to do 14 questions of this fake computer game environment. So I just tried to get my mindset into the place of, well, what would they want you to look for, even though these cars are moving too slowly, too fakely, there's fake animals walking around, there's robots patrolling the streets, like fucking C-3POs bouncing along the streets wearing scarves and makeup, basically. And it's like, okay, well, the road markings are there, the signs are there, the cars are doing things that I suppose they might do in real life, although they definitely wouldn't look like that when they're doing it. What should I look for in terms of that? Which you shouldn't have to get your head into the mind space of. They should really be taking actual videos. I mean, there's no point. If it's about the clarity of video, just get a better camera and mount it correctly. You know, you don't have to like redo the entire scenario in computer-generated bullshit land. The last one was the geese one, and it just made me laugh. It was like, okay then, fine, I'm on question 14, I think I've done well, but this isn't like the videos, I hope I've done well. Play. It actually counted down at 8 seconds before the clip begins playing, so you have to sit there for a bit, like, oh god. And then it plays, and you think, am I using up countdown time by waiting for it to play? And then the last one, they hit me with the computer-generated fucking geese. I don't know what breed of geese they were even meant to be. They weren't Canada geese, and they weren't like white geese. They're like some random breed that I don't even know is it doesn't seem like something that even exists in England, and it is balked computer-generated models, and it was just like the goose was walking. I've seen videos of geese, and this didn't walk like geese. It was like some alien creature slowly padding across the road in front of me. I was just like, I was just laughing. Look, this is my last question. And I was like, I think I've passed. But this is so stupid. And yeah, and I went like, your test is over. And I got up, and it said, quietly, leave the room quietly as possible. So I stumbled on the chair a bit while I was getting up, because it was just a stupid office chair. And I went out the room quietly to the guy with the glasses with all the monitors staring at us. He was seeing to some other student, and I waited, and then he gave me the basket and the key in the basket and said, like, leave and go get your stuff. So I went out, Got my stuff out of the locker. I don't know if they'd gone through my stuff. They might have done. I'll just check. This is still recording. Oh, hold on. Sorry, folks. I had to just change. I had to just check that the camera was not going to run out of battery, and it was about to, in seconds, run out of battery because I started at 30% charge when I made this video. So I almost lost that file because it would have battery would have depleted, the camera would have turned off, the file would have been corrupted and stuck on the memory card like before, in the way that you can't open the file. I hate when that happens. Yeah, where was I? Oh yeah, I had to take my watch off before I went into. It's an old Casio. I don't think it's like a smartwatch or anything. One of those dumb computers, so couldn't have cheated with a watch. Yeah, I had to sit down with my dumb little basket. He gives you a little basket. I think it's like coronavirus bullshit, where he doesn't want to touch your driving license. So he puts it in a basket for you. And then eventually he called me forward again, and he was doing some little printout thing on a printer, and he handed me a A4 slip of paper, which I've got right here, which were my results, which is weird because I thought they were going to email me my results. They said they would. Instead they gave me slips of paper, and then before I opened the slip of paper to have a look at it, there was a guy standing in front of the door to my left with his back to me, and he started looking at his slip of paper, and I couldn't quite gauge the emotion other than it looked like disappointment from behind, because he was just sat there looking at his piece of paper, just sat there looking at it and looking at it and looking at it, and then he opened the door and just left. Like, there was no reaction. I think an Indian woman passed me and she was smiling, so I think maybe she'd look at her results before she left the room and she was happy. So I went out of the building, I went downstairs. I was glad to get out of the sterile environment. As I was walking down the stairs, I took a look at my piece of paper I was given and saw that I passed. I was like, that's such a relief, because I don't have to come here again. Which isn't necessarily true, because if I get 6 points on my license for accidents in the next 2 years, the 2 years leading on from when I passed my practical driving test, then I'd have to take both my practical test again and the theory test again. And then after that 2 years, they consider you safer, so they up that level to 12 points. So you'd have to have 12 points for accidents on your license in order to have to take your theory test again and your driving test again. And that's every year after the first 2 years of driving. So I might have to take theory test again. It depends what happens. If I can keep it so I don't fucking crash or whatever, or don't hit the curb. I don't know what. No, there's a list of stuff in the highway code. I have a look at that page. I've earmarked a few things as I went through. The penalty table on page 146 of the highway code. So it's weird that they make the amount of points you get 6 in the first 2 years and 12 in every year after that, because every punishment or penalty points you can get put on your license begins with a 3. So why so none of these points begin with a 1. They all begin with a 3. You can't get less than 3 points for a punishment, which is weird. The numbers don't really match up. Like, why would... So you've used up, like, once you get a penalty, like if I was to need 6 points on my license for an accident for me to have my license invalidated, and I've got to take the practical and theory test again, all I'd have to do is have one accident, because it's 3 to 6. So the lowest one is 3 to 6 points, I think. Driving after refusal or revocation of license on medical grounds. You can get imprisoned for 6 months. That's the other thing they tell you. So not only, like, half of these are prison, possible prison time, unlimited fines, which means they can just keep stealing money from you as much as they want. What the fuck? They can set any amount of money to fine you for. That's insane. That's government bullshit. I mean, all of this is government bullshit. this thing, to be fair. It's this, like, my ideology is entirely against. Let's remind you, my ideology is entirely against this and everything government has put in place. That said, there would be driving in Ancapistan, and there would be not necessarily rules to follow, but just the way the road is set up now. A lot of it is intuitive for, like the way lanes and roundabouts set up. It's to do with traffic flow and getting you past people, getting people to their destination faster. So all that would still stay in place, and you'd still have to know the procedure for going round it. So, you know, it's not as if all that would disappear when there's no government. It wouldn't. And it's not as if you'd need rules to follow all those road markings and how to engage with the way the road's set up to get the traffic flowing and to get different cars to their destination. You wouldn't need rules to control that. You just, as a driver, need to know how to engage with that system that's in front of you, that setup of how the road is to help flow and how you engage with other road users so that cars aren't bashing into each other. You don't need to be disciplined for that. You don't need to follow rules for that. It's quite organic. You just need to know, how does your car work? How does the road work? So that's my stance on that. There's definitely driving in ANCAP society. Anyway, so the lowest punishment you can get is 3 to 6 points. So the crime or whatever, the offence, that's what they're calling it, I've picked, that is the lowest one, is 3 to 6 points, which is driving after refusal or revocation of licence on medical grounds. You could get imprisoned for 6 months. If you do that, they could set any amount of money they like for a fine. If you do that, I don't know what discretionary, I don't really know what that means. Discretionary is being discreet, which is not telling anyone or keeping quiet about something. Very controlling government sounding stuff. Maybe they mean at your discretion. No, they mean at the person who's charging you's discretion what the disqualification is, whether it's an imprisonment or a fine. I think that's what that means. 3 to 6 points. So, if it's in the first 2 years of my driving, and the lowest offence, I do the lowest offence, I could get 3 points, and then I've used up half of the amount of points it would take for my licence to be disqualified. Or for that same offence, I could just get the full 6 points and get disqualified driving licence just for that same offence. Which says to me that it's weird that they've set the level at 6 points and they say 3 to 6 when they could just say 2 points is all you need to be disqualified, and the fraction is different. You could get 1 to 2 penalty points for that. It's the same thing. So it doesn't make sense that they set it to 6 points to be disqualified, and everything begins with 3 points. Every offence you'll be given 3 points for, to 6 points. Am I making sense? I'm not very good at explaining things, but I think I've made sense there. If you fucking put up with me. Oh god. There's probably a much simpler way of putting that thing that I've just said. Sorry. I'll move on. Anyway, I found out in the hallways that I passed. Here it is. Celebration, get out the party poppers. I went out of the building at that point, so relieved, and I put the paper away. Went out of the building, and on my way out, I went down the steps, because there's like 2 buildings and then like a connecting corridor. You go in the connecting corridor and then you go to the right. I came out there, I went to the steps, there was like a little wall that you could sit on outside it. I sat on the wall for a moment, like a low wall, seat height wall, and the guy in the fluorescent jacket who I'd followed into the building actually followed me out. And I was looking at my results going, okay, you need the pass mark, you need to get 43 questions out of 50 questions right. And guess what I got? 43 questions right. At that point I was thinking, I was 1 point away from failing. I just got out of that, by the skin of my teeth? Is that the phrase? I've narrowly passed the hazard test, and I just thought, I'm relieved, but it could have just, it was 1 point away from being the complete opposite, and I could have failed. So I was really relieved and happy that I passed my test. And I was kind of talking to myself, because I fucking do this sometimes. I was like going, oh man, I was 1 point away, dude. I was 1 point away. I so could have failed, but I didn't. And the fluorescent jacket man was behind me, and he was like, I think he must have been watching me, because he was like, I could hear him sighing. And then he picked up his phone, he phoned someone, and he went, yeah, I'm out. Yeah, I've done the theory. Yeah, I failed. It's bollocks, mate. It's fucking bollocks. None of the questions they gave me were the ones on the mock test on my app. It's fucking bollocks, mate. And I think he was looking at me, and I was like, stood up to go away, because he was just getting annoyed at me because I'd passed and he hadn't. Like, what did this guy do to qualify when I didn't qualify, sort of thing. That kind of irrational thought that enters people's heads. So I thought, I'm just going to move away from this guy, because, I don't know, he might act weird towards me. So I got up and went over to the fountains, and I thought, I looked at the sheet again and went, okay, the hazard perception, the pass mark is 44. I got 67 out of a possible 75 points. That's pretty high. I did really well on the hazard perception, even though they threw me that insane curveball. And I know this video is getting too long, so I'll bring it to a close in a minute. I was happy to have passed. Here it says, it doesn't tell you, it says number of questions wrong. It says, like, topic area of the question you got wrong. Safety and your... I don't know why it says motorcycle and not car. The motorcycle question I got wrong. Documents. I can't remember them asking a question about documents. Road and traffic signs. I really want to know what that is, because, like, road and traffic signs 3. I really want to know what that is that I got wrong. But they don't tell you which questions you got wrong and what was the right answer, which they should do. Because I got 3 wrong there, and it doesn't seem like something I'd get anything wrong on. Because I'm quite good with traffic signs, I thought, doing the mocks and stuff. 1 wrong for hazard awareness, 1 wrong for accidents. I don't know what those were. So I thought, I'm going to go up to the hoe and treat myself to a slushie on the hoe, which does sound like a euphemism, but it's not. Plymouth has a thing called the hoe. I know, it sounds like the whore or something, but it's not. It's like a beach. It's not a beachfront. It's a big grassy green with a lighthouse on high cliffs, which are like terraced. Anyway, check it out on fucking DuckDuckGo it and get some images if you're interested. It's HOE on Plymouth. So I hung out there. It was really nice. There's giant monuments there to Sir Francis Drake, and I've done a video on my other channel of it. You've seen it before. Lovely views out to sea. The ships were coming in and stuff. I went into the Promenade Cafe and got a slushie there and a little tub of ice cream, and went off to one of the seats to have the ice cream, and then had a walk past lots of dog walkers and stuff, and sat on the other end of the hoe facing west. Had my slushie there. A little pug dog or pit bull thing came right up to me. It had beautiful brown eyes, but it was like trying to get my slushie, I think, and I was like, no, I don't have anything for you. And yeah, it was just nice watching it was a sunny day, watching the water, watching the ships come in and stuff. And yeah, might drop in some clips of that. I'll drop in some clips of that here to end the video, how about that? I had a little walk down on the waterfront. And then, yeah, headed off to find my bus to try and get back home. Knowing that I'm relieved and I've got past this ugly government-controlled building test thing, and if I play my cards right, I won't have to do it again, and I won't have to be in that room again. As for the practical test, I can book that now. I don't know how long the waiting lists are, and I know I'll enjoy the practical test as tests go. A lot more than this. If they had videos and the hazard perception of this, I would have enjoyed that. I don't know what they did. But yeah, I don't think I'll pass on my practical test the first time. My prediction is I'll pass the second time. If I'm not passing on the second time, I'll be really pissed with myself, like if I have to do a third time or a fourth time. Tony is a good instructor. I hope he's going to take me a test standard. I've got another driving lesson on Friday, which is in 2 days' time. I'll give you a debrief on that. Thank you for watching.